Hey, you guys, so happy to have you today as we talk about going for the gold with every type in relationship. Today, for the first part of our episode, before we get into type by type, I just want to update you on some E&M pieces. Also, just share some summer fun. We have several fun summer things going on in media right now. Today, to help me with that, I have my summer media manager, Melody Harden, on with us. Hi, Melody.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Well, I'm so glad to have you here. You got through college algebra for the first half of summer. We
Yes.
got through our trip. Now you're having a little bit of time post ACT to just chill, right?
Yes, it's really nice.
Finally, oh my gosh, so interesting. We just had a huge sleepover with her friends this weekend where all the Rewired podcast girls had such a special last summer memory together. And this
Yes.
one made sure to make it fun.
Yes, it was great.
So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the sizzling summer movies in a minute, a little bit about a special event we can all talk about this summer. What's that?
The Paris Olympics.
Yes. And then we're going to talk about these going for the gold with every type. I will. Melody is going to be off on her merry way, relaxing and finally getting that second half of summer. But before we do that, we have a couple of E&M announcements just want to share with you.
Yes, we've had some copies of the book in stores. Really exciting to see it on the shelf. And the book signing was amazing.
Yes, she's so good at that. Also, if you have a bookstore you would like to see the Enneagram and Marriage in, tell us. And we were so happy to see it back up on the Kindle charts for top 100 books in certain categories this summer as well. So we're just grateful and keep sharing. Don't forget your bonus chapter if you haven't gotten it. We've gotten a lot of you saying you want that. Also, we have something special coming up. Two things. One of them is
The EnneaSummit Mental Health Conference that my mom will be speaking at this summer.
yes, I'm so glad. I hope you guys saw the emails. If you're on the email list, you definitely did. I briefly mentioned it tail end of last week. So grateful to be joining on the very first day of the conference, Dr. Kurt Thompson speaking about mental health and faith. I love the way he integrates in his practice. So many others like Andy Kolber, whom you've heard on this podcast twice, Dr. Allison Cook. We have some very special guests aside from them as well. Also, Dr. Dan Siegel will be talking there and talking about the Enneagram and the links to science. Oh my gosh, so excited. So make sure you get your free ticket. And also, if you want the upgraded ticket, that's there as well. So we have several fun things for a back to school. We also have the collective starting back up this week only, right, Melody?
Yes, 7 days only, so make sure to stay on top of that and be looking for updates.
Yes, absolutely. Get on the email list if you're not. And in the show notes, you'll find that this week only, you can sign up to be part of the Enneagram and Marriage membership. And that will allow you time in a group with me every month doing our training. For instance, we're going to be talking next week on Wednesday about values in your marriage and how important it is to work on your differing values. Because as we all know, irreconcilable differences are such a huge piece of marriage when it doesn't go well. Also, we want to make sure you know that you get 4 extra podcasts a month, which are all coaching based. So if you're that person who says, I need coaching, but I don't want to do that, or I can't do that, it is so inexpensive to get coaching this way. I always have you bring your notebook, your pen, and just really your heart. We always reflect. We always take time to get positive, to get relaxed, and to do our work together. So podcasts, extra course inside, also an extra space every month to process and get live coaching with me in a group. So I love you, collective members. We also have some fun goodies for you with new quizzes this month. So make sure you sign up this week if you're just on the fence and you're like, I could use several months of help. And maybe you've done that in the past too, and you're like, I want to come back for several months. You do not have to stay. You can cancel anytime, right?
Yes, definitely.
So make sure you guys sign up for that and the conference if you just want some encouragement, if you're in a hard space. Now for the fun stuff, before we get down to the 9 types and every way they can go for the gold. We're hearing about the Olympics from Melody a little bit today and also the fun summer movies. So we had 3 summer movies we saw as a family.
Inside Out 2, Twisters, and Fall Guy.
Yes. So all of those 3, I don't know if you guys saw any of them. I gave them all the grade of, no surprise to anyone, as a type 7. I gave them all an A.
Yes, me too. Yeah.
2 positivity types. But I'm still going to ask you your top 3 ranks. Like, which one did you feel was
Like
better?
in order?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
good.
Fall Guy was definitely number one for me. It was so good. It was just like a comfort movie, like a classic. So just like easygoing. Like I wasn't thinking of anything but the movie when I was watching it. It was so nice. Number two would be Inside Out 2, just because of like childhood nostalgia.
Mhm.
But Twisters was a close second to second.
Yeah,
But I have to put Twisters at third just because
yeah.
Glenn Powell is not my favorite. And he's been getting a little too much publicity for my taste. So that does have to go to three, but I did still love the movie. It was still an A for me. It was like really fun and just like a good summer vibe. But they were really great movies. I would recommend them all.
Yeah, me too. All of them. Our family like gets along on movies sometimes, and when we do, we have to celebrate that because we
Yes.
can really struggle on finding TV shows sometimes. So you'll hear us talk about our reruns. You know, we're gonna do that Parks and Rec episode eventually. We
Yeah.
promise the lore is not fake, but we just are going really at like snail's pace, right?
Yes. And we also want to like soak up every moment of the show.
It's so fun. So we will get there, but right now I will just add mine is that I put Fall Guy a little bit ahead of Twisters. That might sound a little different for me because I'm more self-pres. You would think I would care more about the nature in Twisters. I do, but I get a little bit OCD about certain aspects. And they said it wasn't anything to do with the first one. And they still use, like, for those who know the lore around Twisters, they still use Dorothy. And it very much was the same. So that turned me off that they were like, oh, this is a totally different thing. But I had known that Helen Hunt was really trying to make Twister 2 and didn't get to during 2020. So I was just like, you know what? I loved it. But you go to number two behind Fall Guy, which has less drama surrounding it behind the scenes. And then also, though, loved Twisters. And then, of course, Inside Out 2, absolutely amazing. Talked about anxiety in such depths that anyone could relate to. And if you're a parent, oh my gosh, can you relate to that movie on how you feel like you're the anxious parent sometimes trying to drive your child forward? And so I just highly recommend because there was a sweetness to it. There was a healing portion to the movie.
It was really beautiful. I loved that.
Yes, me too. So all three, so good. Also, the Olympics, Melody has been tuning in and following some of her favorites. So have I. Anything you want to add to that or recommend to people as they're tuning into the Summer Olympics? Had just a few days of it so far.
I would say just like keep an eye out for like the other countries other than Team USA because I was watching some of them today and they're so good. So it's been fun to explore different sports I didn't even know existed, like handball and like water polo and stuff like that. I did not even know existed. But I've been following some really great kind of celebrities, I guess, from the Olympics, like Alana Maher and the Woodhalls and some of the like main gymnasts like Hesley Rivera and others. But I just think they're really inspiring and it's fun to kind of follow along their journey from like trials to the village and all that. But I follow like a Paralympian and Olympian couple and they're so cute. They're the Woodhalls and they're literally adorable. So I would recommend you check them out and they're like track and field. So
ooh, yes, one of my favorites. So I love that you remind us of thinking more expansively, Melody. Thank you in your type 9 to really be inclusive, remember everybody. And it's a world event celebrating everybody together. I know we were just sad today when France was struggling today. They were very emotional in their floor space and gymnastics. But we were just happy and cheering them on because we saw their closeness, we saw their hearts together. And so you might even have some fun with your Enneagram typing during the games as well. But I'm so glad. And Melody, thank you for sharing this first part of the show with us. And I hope you have a wonderful time resting now.
Aw, thank you. It was fun. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Thank you. Let's talk now about going for the gold with every type. You've heard all of our announcements. I hope you're making your list for your fun summer movies, your Olympians you're going to follow on Instagram or elsewhere. And of course, if you want to attend the summit or get involved in our collective, these are the times to do it. But getting back to you guys as a whole now, just allowing you a moment to catch up with yourself. We caught up on summer, but now it's your time to think about you and the work you're doing. So just like when I'm with the collective, Live and with the Deep Dive podcast on Wednesdays, I'll remind you, take a nice deep breath as we transition from this positive to this space of growth. Allow yourself a nice deep breath in a few seconds and out for a few seconds, and allow yourself to truly reflect on the fact that you are doing good work, and we want you to be able to reach your best goals, but we're going to need to approach some virtue to do that. And with the Enneagram, thankfully, it's not just a personality trait finder where we look to see behaviors and traits. We actually get to go a lot deeper, and we get to really reflect on how we can make changes. And one of the big ways we're going to do all of these changes for going for the gold is going to be, we're going to allow emotional access. Because when we get pent up emotions and we just do an emotional bypass, we don't really allow ourselves to do the work. We can easily miss our target. And we want to make sure that each and every type has a chance, not just to hear what I'm saying, but to really let it sink in, because I'm talking not only about type today, but also instinct, so that you can really get a flavor for how you can move in your type and instinct as you come toward this virtue of your type. So let's start with type 1, and we will go ahead and go through all 9 briefly. The type 1 has the virtue of serenity. So you know that means things are okay the way they are. I don't have to fix them all. And it doesn't mean that things couldn't be better, but first accepting that things are okay the way they are is a precursor for life and just not having control over everything. And I know that can be scary, but it's really important that you allow yourself to know that you don't have control over everything in life, and that yet everything will be okay. And doing that in your instincts means allowing for some self-preservation time, allowing for yourself to rest. It means in the one-to-one or sexual dynamic for you not to be making your spouse feel like they have to do all the changing and that you're perfect. And it also means in the social arena, allowing what is here socially to be what is versus trying to fix everything. And it doesn't mean you can't be doing good things in the social world, or, occasionally helping your spouse to know something that needs shifting. But what it does mean is that these are the exceptions to the rule, because otherwise you're just focused in on doing your work. If your work is self-pres or one-to-one or social change, that you're just watching for yourself not to be too heavy hitting and coming back to serenity. And again, that will take some time reflecting on your feelings and letting them out in healthy ways. Now, if you're a 2, you're going to want to go for the gold with humility. And instead of being in that pride space of I can do it all, and not resting in that self-pres and not taking time to just reflect on what your spouse is already doing for you in that sexual instinct, and not taking time to realize other people can help socially too, then that pride rises up. And instead of really processing what needs to be processed and resting your body and your mind and your heart the ways you need to, and getting self-care, the 2 can fly off and not do a good vault, we'll say, if we're using Olympic language, and come back falling on their faces in an unhealthily humble way. We don't want you to have to come down like that. We would much rather you come down with grace, because okay, you know what? I can't do everything. I can't do every event at the Olympics, right? So just allowing yourself to realize other people have gifts that I don't have. I have gifts that they don't have, and we're all equal. That is so beautiful on you too. And it will get you the gold in relationships, that's for sure. Now, if you're a 3, man, we're just always talking about 3s, right? In the way of performance, and how many Olympians are probably in their 3 space. But we know when 3 is really healthy and really doing their own work, that what they're really walking into is, instead of this space of, wait a second, I have to be, self-deceiving because I can't just be real. I have to just put on a show all the time. They're in a space of deep truth. And guys, sometimes that takes time to get to. You can't just brush everything off that's important and say, I'll get there when I can. I'm too busy performing. You have to do the work as you go along. And that means coming to terms with truth yourself and with your spouse and in your social. And so that's how your instincts work together with this, is that you allow yourself first to ask ask yourself, what is the most true for me? And that is going to require some internalized reflection. It's going to require you to do some deep thinking and then to share that with your spouse and even some feelings. So it's not just this harsh thought, but a vulnerable feeling, softness at least. And then also socially to come across as, yes, very competent, but also humble, like we said to 2. That's a really beautiful look on a 3 who says, I can be authentic. I have my weird spaces and I am not all perfect, all put together all the time. I bleed. And I think that you can really go so much farther in your quest when you are able to take that positioning of speaking the truth. And the truth is sometimes we fall on our faces and it's okay to tell people about that. Okay, now type 4s, you guys often can get really into that truth space of just lamenting and going into the melancholy. But what can really get you stuck is when you're not practicing equanimity. And there are several definitions of this, and you've heard me talk about several, but what I'm really saying here is the constancy of emotion, but also realizing that everybody else has their place. We're not all just ranked like first, second, third, all these pieces. But if we do happen to be ranked, sometimes we are at a company or an event, we can celebrate right where we're at. Melody would have the name, I don't, but she was just telling me today about a bronze medalist who was so extremely excited to have that bronze. And they just knew this was a gift. This was the moment they were supposed to have that. And they weren't upset, whereas others we've all seen have gotten to that space of, I have to be the most unique or the most ranked if I'm in my 4 space. And to know where I stand against others and to, fall down so hard if I have a hard emotion. I can't allow myself to get up with grace. And so I want to remind you that you are allowed to have time to grieve and to have practices for emoting, but that you're also allowed to get up and go. And that is something 4s can be very doing inhibited on. So in the self-pres 4 space, it can look like making sure that you, if you're getting caught up in just hard work, but no rest, coming back to rest. You're allowed to, you don't have to be always at the top of your game. If you're in the sexual 4 space, it might look like saying, we're all beloved. And I know we can rank and I can rank others because that's what often we see sexual 4s do. But just allowing yourself that space to say, we all share a common dynamic and we're all unique. And I don't have to be best friends with everybody, but I do want you to know to yourself, you could say that everybody has a story and a reason why they're the way they are versus any kind of judgment, because maybe they're not 4 enough for you, but just knowing that's not their gift and they're not as good as you are at it, but they're good at other things you're not as good at. And then lastly, the social 4 is so good at lamenting in public and private ways, but allowing yourself to see that side of the equanimity that allows yourself to say, I'm allowed to come back into clarity. I'm allowed to come back into a place of calm so that I can allow myself to heal and to feel my feelings. And that might feel funny for some of you to hear me saying that to 4s, but quite honestly, sometimes they're thinking so deeply that they too forget to feel, or they're sharing with others so much they forget to just let it pass through and move forward. Now, 5s, their Olympic gold comes when they allow for a spirit of generosity in the self-pres dynamic, in the sexual dynamic, as well as in the social dynamic. And that is so real for so many 5s who are already there. But so many of the 5s, when you're feeling overwhelmed, tired, exhausted, you're going to go back to that self-pres space first, and sometimes not even in a healthy way. So for the self-pres space for 5s to be generous means being generous with even your rest and allowing yourself to say, I am allowed to get real rest, not just research rest, but actual rest. I'm allowed to, and it feels good to calm my brain, which has a lot of open tabs, and to allow even just to transition in nature, even allow myself some generosity, sometimes in the money realm where I'm spending. And also if you're in that one-to-one sexual 5 space of generosity, it's allowing your partner to revive you, allowing them to give you what they have to give instead of holding yourself closed, but just allowing that energy to come to you and vice versa, to be just open with yours to them. And if you're in that 5 space socially, allowing yourself to teach others and research. And I know several of you have told me you like to give from behind the scenes. That's okay too. But whatever your comfort level is, allow yourself to find that gold medal of your type with your virtue when you're generous. If you're a 6, you probably know your virtue because you're so good at checking things out and troubleshooting for what's wrong. But let me remind you your virtue of courage. Oh my gosh, do the Olympians need that this year, right? And if you're in that self-pres space, that means that you're allowing yourself to be in that child place of a 6. Sometimes we think of our 6s as very young or very old. And in this space, of course, the 6 can be a little bit of both. And so allowing yourself when you're in the child space to say, I am really good at planning. I am an adult and I am allowed to rest and to laugh and to go into adult mode sometimes, not the extreme, and also to not just live in this older like self-pres space of like I can't do anything. I'm too unable to do anything. Allow yourself to test that limiting belief and say, well, maybe I can't do everything. And maybe there are health reasons or time restrictions or money restrictions, but there are things I can do with courage. And that's a beautiful space for you. And we, of course, see Olympians have to make shifts all the time. Melody mentioned the Paralympics, and you see so many people with troubleshooting issues that they have still exercise courage. And that's also true of in the sexual dynamic in your marriage as well, so that if you're feeling like trust has been broken at any point, which if you're ever with another human, it will be, coming back to that with courage and saying, I can be an idealist at times. I want my comforts. I want my trust, but I will build it back with you. That's beautiful. It's hard. And then lastly, with that social space of courage, even branching out to listen to other voices, to really hone your thoughts. I think that's a really important space for 6s because they can really find loyalty, which is great, but also allowing yourself to fully think in a clean way so that you can not attach yourself too much to just one social movement, but really get inside of it. Use your brain to allow you to think really big and broad and also very fine-tuned so that you could really get inside of other people's arguments on a debate team, not just from a knowledge space, but from a deep care space. That's beautiful and courageous. Now, if you're a 7, your sobriety is the space where you need to rise up and claim your gold medal. And if you're flailing all over in every different direction, you're not going to get it because you're going to be just scattered. And what you'll need to do is take inventory. And that means in your self-pres space to really honestly say, what can I get done today? I can't get it all done, but what can I realistically do and also rest with? And some of that's going to come during the day as you figure it out. But a lot of that's going to come from healthy planning, which if you guys are familiar with 7, 7s do have a planning fixation. So it's both allowing the planning to have its place, but also allowing yourself to change that up and shift it so it's not a fixation, but it's more of I'm going to need some self-care through the day to keep my sober temperament so that I don't forget my emotions and my softness. And then I'm going to also try to do my plan so that I can be balanced and be doing good things for the world. And then for the 1-to-1, also knowing 7s as an idealist, the sobriety looks like really doing your feelings work if you're expecting your relationship to be everything to you, and instead realizing we are responsible for tuning to our own joy and also getting rest and knowing it can't be joy all day. And then if you're in the social 7 space, just allowing yourself to help a lot of people because that's just such a good look for 7s, but also balancing out when that's done. I know I had a million graduation parties this summer and I just took a couple at a time and I would give myself pacing, and so many families, so many nephews, nieces, you name it. I'm sure you have it too if you're a 7, people that you want to love on and socially support, but just allowing yourself to pace with that so you can truly do a good job and be a person of your word versus flighty. Now, if you're in the 8 space, it's an innocence that we want you to embrace to truly go for the gold. And we're so used to 8s being strong, right? We're so used to 8s being somebody who's vibrant, who's able to lead, who's going to get others to be vulnerable, but maybe not themselves. And here in the self-pres 8 space, it's an invitation for you to reflect, to go sit, to go be able to rest. And I know a lot of 8s already do this, and they know if they don't rest, they won't be able to perform the next day, but also to rest rest in terms of resting from that justice space and just allowing God to take the bigger pieces and you take some of the smaller that, yeah, there are some injustices. You're here to help and to fix things that are wrong and make them right. But a lot of the time, you're just here to be part of learning and growing too. And there's a childlikeness that a lot of eights didn't get, and that reclaiming is very valuable. And in the one-to-one, letting your partner see that innocence, allowing them to know, oh my gosh, they bleed too. They have feelings, they're crying and they didn't show me, but they are. That is just everything for your partner to see and to know that you have a huge heart too. And I know it's hard because sometimes trust is broken, but let them see it piece by piece and know that no partner can hold all of any of us. And that's really big for eights to know, but they can hold with you sometimes and you can do the rest. Especially if you have a faith life, you can also release. Now, lastly, with the eights, we want to make sure that in the social platform area, you need the rest too. So the innocence there looks like, once again, coming to that space of releasing, just allowing yourself to realize that you can do a lot. You can do a lot from 6 a.m. probably to sometimes 11 at night. I know some eights that have done that days and days and days on end. But really important that you allow yourself to just realize you're human, to get actual rest from the social planning and support of others, and even socially to just sometimes come in the group instead of leading the group, just being part of it and saying, guys, I'm just having a long day. I have a headache. I don't feel good today. Whatever it is that's going to make you a little bit vulnerable. It doesn't have to be fully innocent, but just that space of connecting inner child to inner child, heart to heart, in a social way. So people know you're superhuman in a way, but you're also a human. Okay, now for our nines, going for the gold for you looks like action. So we know that you're really good at rest. We know you're really good at harmony. You're really good at reading others, getting along. But being an activist is huge. And you heard Melody do that a little bit earlier in some ways that we'll talk about in a moment. But if it's self-pres, it's first going to look like you allowing yourself to notice what you need for rest. It might not be the same as your spouse. It might not be the same as your kid. It really is going to matter what brings you replenishment, because you are important and you are allowed to matter and you do matter. So really realizing it will take actions though, not just laying down rest, but actually saying to yourself, for me, what kind of rest do I need? What kind do I need today if I was emotionally tapped out? What kind do I need today if I'm bored? What kind today do I need if I'm feeling angry and the injustice rising up? So that's good for you to reflect on and to get into action with. And then the one-to-one also can look like that, where you're setting boundaries with your spouse and saying, there are things that I want to do today too, not just merging with everything they want, but getting into action means not just caring for them or the routines, but saying what will help me to make sure that I'm living fully today and doing something that I'm good at or was created to do. And that takes a lot of reflecting for nines, because often there's a sense of like, wait, I'm just moving forward. I don't even know. I'm not even stopping to think about that. So doing a prioritized list can help quite a bit with that. And that gets you right to that gold and lets you hang on to your spouse as well, in terms of them feeling like they're on that list too. And you have time with them secured, but you're also taking care of you. And that's so magnetizing for your partner. And then lastly, for our nines, as I said, with Melody, socially really allowing for everybody to be seen, to be heard, for voices socially, to be having room made for them, and to be a justice fighter. Sometimes for a nine, it's a look that they give, or it's a not saying anything that says more. You don't have to always actively fight, but there's a lot that can be said, not passively. I'm not talking about being passive aggressive, but just allowing yourself that gracious space to not laugh at a rude joke and to actually speak up for those who are maligned. This is beautiful. It's so needed in the world. And it's activism in your own way, in your own style. So that is my quest for all of you as you're going for the gold. It's my quest for myself too. I'm so glad you joined us today for this time. It is so fun to get to do this with you. Pretty soon we'll have Tyler Zach on. We're going to have a Harvard scholar on Deborah talk to us soon. I have so many fun things planned for you this summer and fall. Don't forget this week, if you have this time to really reflect on your relationship, that we are open for our collective. And if you don't have the time, but you need to take the time, please do. Our membership is very low cost, and it is really helpful for coming into that space of truly changing your life in very active, specific ways as a couple. I research marriage all day long, and this is definitely something I'm passionate about, as you can tell. And then also, if you're somebody who is passionate about the mental health space with us, don't forget the conference, the EnneaSummit. It is free to you. And that is a place where you can work on your own healing and really learn from so many speakers. I'm so grateful to be one of them. And that is in our show notes as well. I will talk to you soon. And thank you for joining us today. Go get them.